Hello, everyone. We'll get started here in about 3 minutes. So grab a cup of coffee, check LinkedIn and Facebook, and we'll get nerdy here in just a minute. I saw a hand go up. Hey, everybody. It is exactly 11 o'clock. We will get started in just 1 minute. Give anybody that was in a prior meeting a minute to join us. And then we will rock and roll at talking a little bit about the impact of COVID on learning and development, but also on our society as a whole. And that is going to be our topic. So we'll get started here in a minute. And in the meantime, let me know if you guys are able to see my screen. You can do your raise hand. And if you can hear me. And then also if you can hear the music in the background. So for all of you, this is the Corpse Bride. The Halloween is just in a few days, and so I thought this would be a good intro music for us. Ooh, hashtag. That's a good question. Somebody asked me if there's a hashtag. We don't have one. If you would like, if you guys can figure out something we could do, I'm down for that. You can hear me, but you can't hear the music. That's okay if you cannot. Okay. Well, I apologize. It sets the tone. I thought it would come through, but apparently it does not want to. All right. So if you guys want to come up with a cool hashtag for this bad boy, you're more than welcome to. But what I want to let you guys know, starting off, I am Andrew Hughes, president of Designing Digitally. We are a full service training company. Sorry about that. Let's make sure my notifications are shut off. And there we go. And our organization develops out custom training solutions to be able to solve a problem with inside of an agency, organization, or corporation. And what I can tell you that's something that we have seen is a fundamental shift in the workforce, fundamental shift in our society, and a fundamental shift in how we are conducting learning. And that's a lot of what we're going to talk about today. And COVID. Somebody responded with COVID LND for the hashtag. So if you guys would like to hashtag that, we can certainly do so. I'm very open to that. And for anyone that has been close to me, I have been working internally with the company at Designing Digitally since its conception in 2006. And we've went through some massive changes over the last year. And then after those mass changes, COVID hit. So there are even more mass changes happening for, I'm sure, our organization and yours. Raise your hand if you've seen some just mass changes in your life, your lifestyle, or just your work, and any of that due to COVID. Have you been directly impacted from, at work from COVID yourself? And that doesn't necessarily mean being laid off. That could have been, you were in your office and now you never go, things like that. And so it looks like quite a few of you have really had that impact happen. And so today, for many of you that have been in our prior webinars, a lot of our webinars were talking about how to do things. What we had to do for ourselves at Designing Digitally is we really had to say, hey, look, we need to look at what's actually happening to our customers because we are not necessarily industry centric. And so we are very agnostic when it comes to technology and approaches and also industries. And so the first thing we did is we started to look at a lot of the government statistics that have been tracked by National Science Foundation, the Department of Defense, and other agencies to be able to see what's actually happening in the workforce. So that's what the first part of this is, followed by what are we seeing in L&D, followed by here are some things that we could possibly do, and here are the trends that we're seeing. So I hope for any of you that, especially if I have instructional designers out there, you will understand that beginning that I'm starting with here is really about those objectives that we want to meet. Okay, so I just briefly went over who I am, Andrew Hughes of Designing Digitally. We are located in Franklin, Ohio. And if you guys would like to, you can snap this or grab your phone real quick. If you don't have it by you, you can add me to LinkedIn if we're not already connected, so we can continue to be nerdy. This is a nice picture of me before COVID. My hair's longer, a lot more gray, and the beard is way bigger now. I talked a little bit about this, but we're not just a development firm. We do the consultative side of doing performance consulting at the beginning, then actually developing out solutions. But one of the biggest things that we're doing now is really tracking the return on investment and metrics with developing most of our solutions with XAPI. So now let's get into this now that I've kind of explained what we do. So how, based on the data and research that we have found, how has COVID-19 impacted companies? Couple things that you should know, 43% of them have actually temporarily closed within several weeks of the COVID-19 pandemic. So many of these were small businesses or businesses that were running on low cash flow. So 43% of them were knocked. Since January, we have a reduction of active employment of 39%. So that's active employment. That's not the unemployment. That's who's was actively gone. Mid-Atlantic firms firms actually closed 54%, and in the Mid-Atlantic Agreement, employment was down by 47%. And again, this is the actual national science institute's data. We saw a 50% decline in retail, arts, entertainment, personal services, food services, hospitality, and business within the first 90 days of COVID actually being announced as something that we need to immediately work on. So about in March to April timeframe. So what we saw from a consumer standpoint, our medium firm monthly expenses were over $10,000. That's really only 2 weeks. 3/4 of them had enough cash to last about 2 months or less. So most of the people are really living in a debt society, did not and do not have the expendable cash. 47% of businesses expected to be open in December of this year. So by December, only 47% to be expected of small businesses compared to 72% from a shorter duration of last 90 days. So we're looking at a 7% decrease still by December. 70% of executives, anticipate taking advantage of the PPP program. I don't know how many of you, and you can raise your hand if you have or do, if your organization has had a chance to actually see or utilize the PPP program. It has really helped float many businesses, especially over the summer. But as some of you may or may not know, if you work in the actual business side of the organization, the PPP program has basically been exhausted from the amount of time frame and the allowance that you were able to get. So one of the things that we're now seeing is a vast shift in talent and skills needed. One of the things that we're seeing is a big jump in things such as healthcare, insurance, technology, banking, and consumer goods that are being sold online. How many of you, and you can raise your hands if you've ever had this, how many of you have a friend or family member that are doing, online goods or sales on Etsy and things of that nature to make side money? Things like that. What you're finding is that is actually spiking because human beings were innovative and we're looking for channels to be able to survive. So you're seeing a big spike in that. As far as the economic conditions in the next 6 months, again, this is all documented, and I'll hide this. We actually have the links, and I'll be able to provide this data. But if you go to pnas.org, you can start to grab some of this data. But looking at this, we're looking at least for the North America, we're looking at about expected 49% better increase in economic conditions within the next 6 months. But we also have a 31% decrease in the actual businesses, small businesses. So just like many of you know, the bigger businesses are going to get bigger and the smaller businesses are going to have to find ways to innovate to be able to stay afloat. So how does this actually impact you and yourself? Here's a couple things you should know. It rapidly has changed the way that many of us have worked. Travel bans, we have skeleton crews. Many of us have been parts of layoffs. Many of us are part of those skeleton crews. Most of us are doing remote work or coming in only part-time within our office. Many of us are feeling the anxiety of social distancing, and the tough part is everyone that I continue to talk to, we continue to hear when the new norm is going to be the norm. Unfortunately, I don't know if as a society we really know what that new norm is going to finally settle as. I don't think the dust has settled, and so we don't necessarily know exactly how that's going to play out. Some of the other statistics that we have found is 9 out of 10 of employees are concerned about COVID-19 and its impact on themselves and their families. 3 out of 4 think their organization is responding effectively to the pandemic and trying to do their best to mitigate risk for you as an employee. 1 out of the third of the employees think their managers have responded less than effective. So it looks like 2/3 of the managers have at least been open and understanding about any of those requests and changes. Some of the things that we have found based on the research that was done, many of the employees want support for their financial, physical, and psychological well-being. I'm not sure if you know, but the United States is seeing a spike in mental health cases, and much of that is being directly blamed on the distancing and the shut-in situation. In comparison to non-remote positions, we are seeing, at least from the remote side, positive effects on their daily work. Some of them that have been polled have stated that they had, with the flexibility, they had increased engagement with what they're working on, a little stronger sense of well-being, and the more flexibility for personal needs. However, we're also in a situation where job loss is happening tremendously. So as a society, we now have to be even more of lifelong learners and independent workers than we ever have been before. So the days of just checking in and, stamping along and walking out is slowly becoming the end of our working world, especially with 158 million people had jobs in February compared to 123 in May. And that is still on the decline, and it's going to as the small businesses close. Just in spring alone, 30 million jobs were shed from payroll within the first 60 days of COVID announcement back in March. 82% of the employees say the crisis was affecting their work lives on a daily basis. And we're looking at 40.8 million jobs applicants were filed just in May alone, and holding steady and increasing. Employees were asked if they enjoyed work from home. When the surveys came back, 82% agreed they enjoyed it. They said they felt less stressed from working from home, but they also felt that they were more productive working from home. So the interesting thing is there are people that agree and strongly disagree. And while it's 66%, there could be pools of those that don't feel that way. Looking at this, interacting with their supervisors, they do feel that it's across the board. There are quite a few that feel that there's a strong disagree about interaction. One of the major things that I have seen both in our organization and across the board is communication can be tough, especially if you had communication and processes put in place where you were all face to face, and now you're moving into that entire quick flip of the switch going virtual. There's communication. There's one of the biggest things I think for all of us, and you can raise your hand if you ever had this, tone of emails when there's no tone really at all. And so it's just you may be having a frustrating day or something like that. Anybody had that? Raise your hand if you ever had one of those, tone of emails where you read it and you're like, are you kidding me? And then when you get on the conversation, you're like, oh, well, I read that incorrect. Oh, let me guess, none of you, huh? Organizations have stepped up. One of the things we've seen is 78% of the employees feel that companies have stepped up to ensuring that they are actually safe. 80% feel that leadership has done a great job, and 77% feel that they have put a necessary plan in place. Whether they have followed that plan exactly was not stated, but this is the data that we've been provided. So, question for you guys, and this is always one of those that I like to ask. did you, and this is a poll question that I just posted up, did you have online training before COVID? And the reason why is we're finding some interesting trends for ourselves. So want to know from you guys, did you have online training before COVID hit? And there's nothing wrong with any of the answers. We just want to know. And what you guys do is you help us be able to make these presentations by letting us know of a survey result of if you did or if you didn't. And it's interesting because while you guys are all answering this, I've seen it across the board. I've seen Fortune 500 companies that, don't have their sales process documented. And then I have seen, some of the smallest nonprofits running on, pennies, and with little to no cash flow that have the most amazing documentation and processes put in place, but just don't have, and even the training online, but just don't have the economic push to be able to push that stuff forward. So it's fascinating. When we're looking at this, 36% of you said that you had all your training online. 42% you had said you had some, and 21% of you said you did not have any training. So as you guys can see, it's relatively balances itself pretty closely to where we're at in the society and what everyone is dealing with a different start and stop point in business and the way that they were handling training. So let's talk a little bit about the impacts to our customers. Okay, 43% of them said that they plan to do more of their shopping online. What you're going to find, and for any of you that don't know this is in my opinion, and I'm not talking down. It's just something I see in the future. We're going to have definitely have a housing issue or a commercial real estate issue in about a year to 2 years here in the United States. And a lot of that is going to come from the fact that right now we have many empty buildings that are still under lease, that are, a extreme overhead expense for many companies if they decide that, this trend is sticking. So what we're going to see is we're even going to see more people doing online shopping just with COVID, less interaction with human beings. 31% of them will be shifting from physical to online. So you're seeing even a bigger push, not just to buy, but from new people joining the purchasing experience. One of the other things is the households have 58% of the households have cut their spending and tightened their budgets in their household. So there's less actual consumer spending going to be happening here in these holidays. 78.8% of their shopping budget went towards food currently. So that's a pretty high amount of external shopping. That is not your basic necessities of your rent or mortgage or anything of that nature. That is their shopping budget. The 32% of them increase their awareness of marketing messages and understanding of consumer messages because they want to make sure that they're making even more informed decisions with tighter budgets. There are 3 areas that we have found, and we've looked at that any industry, and I don't care if you are one of our customers, somebody else's customer, or you're building the training, or you work as someone that's not even in the training side of things. There are 3 areas that you have to actually focus on at this current moment for your customers. One of the biggest things is we have to have stronger customer relationships. Now that we're in a digital realm, building those relationships involves interacting, having those conversations, and being a part of each other's lives. And so that is another piece that's going to have to be extremely important for both small and bigger businesses, especially the smaller businesses, because we are going to be challenged in different ways than bigger businesses will be. We have to improve customer satisfaction and loyalty. Human beings, for the longest time, we used to be brand centric. we turned into price centric. And now what is happening is the smaller businesses are going to have to figure out how to make those actual consumers to be loyal and provide satisfaction to them so that they continue to come back, which has been a very hard challenge in a society of take the non-branded price that is 5 cents cheaper. And one of the things that we all know is you're going to have to stand out from the competition. One of the things that we see is even with tech businesses, while they may be booming, if you look at the cloud companies, they are on a trajectory fight to try to stand out because there's a big battle in cloud right now over who's going to be handling the infrastructures for specific governments, not just here in the United States, but all over the world. And so they are massively positioning themselves to try to make that happen, and they have to figure out strategic ways to do that. And you're going to have that same issue come about a year now when budgets are fully tightened. The commercial real estate market is tough. We're trying to figure out the back and forth of bringing people back to work or not. There's going to be major decisions made, and the people that are able to stand out and make those differences and show their value are the ones that are going to be able to make it. So one of the things you do want to do, and one thing that we never talk about in the training side, is how we can get our customers to reevaluate, how we can help them with whatever product and services, whether you sell tires or you sell medical devices. You have to look and reevaluate your customers and see what you can do to show them that you can help them through any of those trialing and troubling situations, to be able to show the value of why they should purchase your product or services rather than another, because they're going to be scrutinizing and doing a few more Google searches before they purchase from here on out. So how has this actually changed employee training? How has coronavirus really done that? A couple things that we found is there were statewide and federal-wide shutdowns. And we saw, and I don't know, and you can raise your hand if you guys did, but we saw a huge I don't know how to say this, but we saw a huge amount of shifts of people trying to go online quickly. And we saw what we considered to be the pertinent information that needed to be put online so that people could get a knowledge transfer at the lower level of blooms at the beginning, so that we had the information up there. And that's what we saw within the first 30 to 60 days. You guys may have seen something different, but it's certainly what we saw. 42% of that workforce was full-time at home by June of this year. Most companies were unprepared for this. And I don't know how many of you, and you can raise your hand, how many of you had your IT department going out and buying laptops by the dozen and starting to shift people to laptops if they weren't already, and, mail those bad boys out. And the reason why I state that is there's an amazing computer place called Micro Center. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of them. There's a few of them. And believe it or not, it's where we get a lot of our equipment. I walked in to buy laptops, and there was a line of at least 35 people long, and they were all there, and they all had their nice lanyard or badges on and their polos from their company, and you could just look on their faces said, I'm about to go set up 20 computers the exact same way today and mail them out. You could see it on their face, and you could see that quite often. Same thing, mouse, keyboards, headsets, things like that. They were all just gone, and it looked like a ghost town down that alley. It was interesting. A couple other things. We saw a huge shift to virtual instructor-led trainer, especially since we saw a lot of VILTs. Things like Adobe Connect have been used heavily, and a lot of lower-level blooms, taxonomy developments, very limiting e-learning, not what I'm talking about is not higher level of blooms, fully interactive game simulated type of experiences getting developed. Just quickly get it up online so that they can have that knowledge or that information in front of them. We also now know that workplace platforms are becoming the new normal. One that, if you've ever talked to me before, if you're looking at an informal work knowledge repository system and you want to do it on the cheap, I always tell everybody, get some licenses to Snag It, utilize that, set up your own either YouTube private channel or a FTP site, or just use screencasts that they have on Snagit, and you can just start, doing recordings like this and start your informal knowledge transfer and look at actually developing out structured e-learning training or scenario-based training experiences when you have the proper time to really think it through. We're also seeing a new generation of remote workers. The people that are coming in the workforce this year, remote working will be their norm. And I tell you that because some of you are like, yeah, I've already been remote. I know quite a few of you, even if I look at the attendees list, that are some of my industry buddies. And I know for a fact you've been remote for probably quite a few years, but not everyone has been. So it's a big adjustment for people. And not only that, but when you have a group of individuals that come in and their norm is remote work, what happens a year to 2 years from now if we do decide to go back to what we were doing before, and how does that impact their mental thinking and the way that they've done things working with your organization, so on and so forth. So we have a lot of blowback that we do not know of. But the thing is it's not like remote training is something new. 1728, we actually had the stenograph learning, or stenography, learning shorthand. And the way that they did it is they would actually practice virtually and send each other mail. So it's not like this is a new concept of doing online. But what has happened is we've accelerated online interactions. We've built systems around how to do it with a facilitator, not do it with a facilitator, make it fully interactive media, make it a hybrid of those two, make it a presentation like this. So we've accelerated online interactions to meet those needs, but in essence, distance doesn't necessarily hinder your ability to learn. There are things such as arc welding and things like that I've done in a simulation that I would much rather do face-to-face. So I'm not stating you can't, but I was able to get the concepts down from the simulation. We also know that companies are scrambling to find those quick turnaround solutions. One of the things that I've seen before, there's an amazing software app called Bloomfire, which is another knowledge repository. And that knowledge repository is something that I find is the first immediate need for many companies, especially during this switch of COVID. We're also now in the growth of digitalization. One of the things that I tell everyone, and we're going to talk about, is it's great that we've gotten our information online quickly because of COVID. But the thing that I'm worried about for us as trainers is the fact that before, we could control the learner's environment even if they were taking it online. And what do I mean by that? If you were working at Procter & Gamble, which is here in Cincinnati, and you're in their office and you have to take this compliance training, right? You take that compliance training and you're actually at your desk where you have a controlled environment that is focused and most importantly, compartmentalized to work, in which distractions can be limited. Now that is over with. So that means, trainers, that if you're on this line, you need to understand this. You are no longer competing with the other courses in your LMS. You're competing with the courses in your LMS, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, their work that they have to do, their email, and their children. Their dogs, their cats, their house. When Amazon rings the doorbell, you are now competing with the exact same stuff that people in marketing are now have been competing with. You don't have the ability to just control their attention anymore. You now have to actually make something that is going to compete with everything. And so I hope that didn't give a chill down your back, but it's the reality of where we are in our society. And that's because we're now seeing the even more of a digital transformation because of COVID. 70% of companies are actually looking at putting in that hybrid workplace from now on and here on out. And that will be there from beginning to end. 90% of the companies are planning to use some form of e-learning by 2020. And again, that was already in place before COVID. So now this is rapidly increased to the majority of all companies. 21% think they're already completed their digital transformation. So looking at this from Forbes, we only have 21 of those companies feel at this current moment that they've actually made it. And then 40% of all companies spending in 2019 have spent it towards digital transformation. And you had a $2 trillion spend in digital transformation in 2019. And so that was prior to this. So imagine what we're seeing right now. And we do not have that exact number. I would love to have that number, but it would be fantastic. Executives say that the top benefits are to improve operational efficiencies, faster time for things to get to the market, and the ability to meet customer expectations. Now with this shifting, we're in a situation where that's going to change even more. And so these were what we were looking at before COVID. Now, I'm sure this has shifted tremendously, but that was the kind of push that we were looking at. One of the other things that we're now seeing is 55% of all startups had adopted digital business strategies compared to 38 from traditional companies. So even the startups prior to this were really looking at how they could just do it as a remote workforce and a remote company prior, especially those digital tech companies. 89% of all companies have already adopted digital first business strategy or plan. So those smaller startup companies are really starting with we're going to be fully remote. We may not even have a brick and mortar at all. So for digital first, one of the things that we saw is general services, small businesses, consulting agencies. The next were financial services. And a lot of the reason why you should know about financial services and healthcare services were really digital first is because finance, healthcare, and the military are the three most attacked industries when it comes to cyber attacks. And so what you guys should be aware of is they really have to be digital first business strategies, or otherwise they're going to be the first to be attacked. And so they really have a technology adaptation that they must set far beyond what some other companies have to do. 77% of all companies say the relationship with technology is average or just above average. So again, thinking about how you could provide technology innovation without providing security risk. 65% of all companies have a positive adaptation technology, but they do feel there's disruption over the next 3 years within inside of what they're doing and how they're actually doing it. 27% of all companies say that digital transformation is a matter of survival. Just imagine now, as of today, because this is a 2019 stat, I would say this has got to be double, if not triple, the percentage of what it has to be today. 87% of companies think digital will disrupt the industry, but only 44% were prepared for this digital disruption. So looking at this, we only had 44% of the companies ready and prepared. That's why I tell you the story about sitting at Micro Center in a line to order laptops because there were 44% of you were prepared for this. 71% say that digital mature companies can attract new talent based on the use of data, compared to 10% of early stage digital companies that are brick and mortar. So it's actually more advantageous for you guys to grab pools of people that are virtual, and you could pull from remote talent easier and get somebody more specialized. But you do have the situation right now of, are we going back to the workplace or not? 55% of companies without digital transformation believe they have less than a year before they have to start to lose market share. So again, especially with the consumers moving to online shopping even more, we're going to see a huge boost in this also. 45% of executives don't think their company has the right technology to implement digital transformation. For any of you that know me, our company, and we're in Zoho meeting right now, we actually developed and set up a massive ERP for our organization, and it has been a 4-year in the making situation. So I can tell you right now that 45% of executives probably do feel this way, because implementing systems like that take extreme amount of time. Along with the bigger you are, the longer it takes. 56% of CEOs say digital improvements have actually led to increased revenue. So the applications and the things that you implement in training actually help increase and both direct and indirect for the organization. Digital mature companies are 23% more profitable than their less mature peers. So again, coming to that, a lot of those digital mature companies are the ones that will end up surviving. They're 64 more likely to achieve their business goals. They're 64% more likely to achieve having those digital first technology companies and digital first processes and systems in place. And 16% of companies said their company's digital transformation has improved performance and are sustainable long term. So one of the things that I see from this is if we do implement digital technologies and systems in place, we have to be able to promote that. How many of you have ever had the have to tackle internal promotion of one of your training efforts? Raise your hand. Have any of you had to internally market training before? And I'll tell you, one of the things that I can tell you from internally, and I see some of you raising your hand, some of that is some of the hardest things to do. And a lot of it is because there's so many technologies and systems and things that are being put in place and processes and things to initiatives that a lot of times it's internal promotion is some of the hardest things to do because you have to get them excited about this transformation or why they should use this. And a lot of times they'll see it as a hindrance because they may have already mapped the process in the way that they do it or what they're doing. 93% of companies consider innovative technologies as a necessary thing to be able to have that transformation. And 76% of companies are investing in emerging technologies currently. I can tell you, prior to COVID, we saw a fundamental request from many organizations over VR and simulating things that they're doing in the workplace. And COVID hit, and those are still of interest. But the first thing that we have seen is let's get the low level blooms and the context information up to them so that they have it online and have access to it. 81% of employees that are digitally mature say that innovation has been their biggest strength. So one of the things you have to keep in mind is we have to be able to be fluid and innovative while we're all in this extreme stressful time. There are more than 40% of the Fortune 500 companies that use e-learning, and 72% of those organizations claim that e-learning provides them with a distinct competitive advantage. So there's a way for you guys to actually build that content and context so that it can be utilized. And 72% of them say that it gives them a competitive advantage right now. So many of you know these, but we'll talk a little bit about what we're seeing from types of learning solutions currently. One of the things that we're seeing is we're seeing a lot of the lower level blooms e-learning developments. And I've said that a couple times. These are quickly get your information up. These may have been instructor-led training sessions that are no longer going to be happening and may fill a gap if they're not going to do a virtual session or webinars like this. We're seeing those distance learning, the virtual instructor-led or facilitator-led classes. We saw a huge push, and we see this at the university. And myself, I have been strictly online at the University of Cincinnati for 6 years now. So it wasn't an adjustment for me. But what I can tell you is my colleagues, some of them that have been there for 20 years at the university have been online only to share some of their content material in the LMS, which we use Canvas now when we were using Blackboard before. And what I can tell you, it's been a huge adjustment for them, and it's been pretty tough for them. And we at the university have done many things to try to help them bring in instructional designers that can actually develop out the courses so they can facilitate more, especially those that are not as technology inclined. So this is something that we're finding, especially for people that had trainers that were actually at your organization. Virtual instructor-led training with something like Connect or even Zoom meetings or webinars or things are very popular right now. We're also seeing virtual exchanges. One of the things that we do at our organization is we have a system like Slack, and we have huddles every day. And so early in the morning, I have huddles with different specific divisions of our company just to go over what's happening that day. And what we're finding is those virtual exchanges actually allow for knowledge exchange pretty quickly. So it's something you guys might want to look at implementing if you can stand to talk to your coworkers every day. For some of you, I think you already know this, the importance of e-learning, developing that to be self-reliant and self-sustainable. It increases knowledge retention. One of the things that I love about online learning is that I can put my knowledge up there like this, put it up into the stratosphere, the cloud, and allow it to be exchanged to anybody else that actually reads this and or experiences this with me. And it's fantastic because I may be directly or indirectly training somebody or teaching somebody something that we know or I know without even knowing that I've done it. And we already know all of this, so I'm actually going to skip this part and get into here. Every dollar invested in online training results in a $30 increase in productivity. And again, this is from the e-learning industry's research, and companies that use e-learning technology achieved an 18% boost on employee engagement. So you can look at this and start to look at how you can provide and justify ROI, because here's the sad part, everybody. Are you ready for this? We're now in an economic crisis at almost every company that I've spoken to. You are going to have to justify what you're doing training for and justify the dollar amounts for it. So from here on out, while it's been great to just know that they've passed it or not, we're going to fundamentally have to shift that to a lot of XAPI to say what's actually happening and what we're actually seeing from the employees in their assessment pieces and make those strategic decisions even more than what we are today because we're going to be already on shoestring budgets, and they're going to be looked on at as a microscope. McDonald's reduced onboarding time by 66% by utilizing e-learning. I don't know how many of you guys have put your onboarding completely online. Raise your hand. Do you guys have your onboarding and your orientation pieces, or at least your first week of orientation? Have you converted that to a complete online experience yet? Raise your hand. And this is where the time where somebody is like, oh crap, I was on Twitter. Let me get back and raise my hand. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what we're seeing as popular different types of modalities for training. We're seeing a push on mobile learning, and this is not necessarily just making mobile-friendly e-learning modules. We're seeing a big push for mobile learning apps, primarily apps that, let's say the company may have a repository or a knowledge repository or something, and what they're finding is they would like to be able to move that or have a system that they could use from a mobile standpoint. So we're seeing a big push in that direction. We're also seeing, before COVID, I talked about this, the simulation of virtual reality push. We also have a big push towards utilizing machine learning and artificial intelligence. One of the things that we're doing here, and I'll give you guys this link to take a look at, is we have a project where we're doing warehouse training. and we're doing simulations with inside of that, and we're developing out voice recognition that allows you to interact with the non-playing characters that are part of the simulation and story, rather than responding with click next back or choose an option. And we're building out those pieces along with a lot of AI machine learning that's building out custom learning paths and approaches based on aptitude at the beginning from scenarios and assessments at the start. We're also seeing quite a few compliance training requests, and I think that's because we're now in a different realm and different scenarios and situations that are taking place within inside of compliance with this shift to a digital workforce. And then we are still building quite a few serious games. They understand that the serious games are not, Pac-Man or Candy Crush. These are things such as one great example is the pre-flight checklist to launch a rocket into space. And so we're building learning experiences like that are what we consider to be types of games. And then also, for any of you that are educators in the United States, at the end of this, if you could send me an email, we are in the middle of building microlearning for the Department of Education and are doing a learner analysis in which we're paying anyone that's from the K through 12 or the higher education realm to do a basically a listening session and a learning session from you. And so you can email me after this. I'll show you my email address. If you are in the K through 12 or higher ed space, we would love to have you be a part of that project with us. And one other thing that we are seeing is augmented reality. And we had a big demand for this, especially for things such as safety and inspections and out in the field interactions with specific devices and tools. And once we saw COVID and that hit, that fundamental change went straight to the e-learning side. And now we're starting to see those return of those different types of interactions. So, poll time. Got a quick question for you guys. Is your company planning on transitioning to online learning in the next few months? Training and development. What are you guys going to be doing? And what's your fundamental shift? Just thinking about what you guys are going to be doing and what your organization is going to be doing. And again, this information is to just help us. We don't know who selected what. We just know the totals, and it kind of helps to get a sense of what's actually happening in the industry and from you guys. So when are you guys planning? Do you guys have a plan in the next few months, next year, or are you already done and already planned and rocked and rolled? So I give a minute and I'll do the do 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 do. So looking at this, it looks like 73% of you are already using online training. That's fantastic. If I had cool things like my buddy Brent at IDIOC, I would do like the cheer sound effects, but I'm not as cool as him. So one of the things that we do have to talk about are what are some of the benefits of having this remote workforce, because it's not all dark and dreary and terrible, okay? One of the things that I can tell you is our company was already a hybrid, and many companies that I have worked with had somewhat of a hybrid type of workforce. Right now, prior to this, we saw 4.7 million were already working remotely worldwide. That means that, again, I talked a little bit about this. With the remote workforce, you guys are able to get quality across the board. I can tell you that Designing Digitally has just hired, I think, 2 project managers within the last couple couple weeks, and both of them are not here in Ohio, and so we were able to pull from different places because of this and get what we consider to be some pretty amazing talent because of that remote workforce. Another thing is the employers, based on statistics that we found from the Department of Job, the DOG, or not the Department of Justice, Department of Job and Family Services, that $11,000 is actually saved for commuter or half commuter time or late time that is made. How many of you guys, you don't have to raise your hand for this, have been 15, 20 minutes late to work because of commuter time? It's not necessarily something that you may or not have claimed. And so those types of things are statistically being looked at. The workforce actually grew to 7.9% for remote workforce from 2016 to 2017. We saw over 44% growth in the last 5 years over it, and that's a 91% growth over the last 10 years. So this has slowly been growing over the last years, but now we're just going to see an increased spike because of COVID. We're now seeing that 159% increase in remote workforce from 2005 to 2017. We had in 2015 3.9 million U.S. workers, and by 2020 we had 4.7 million. And so I'd love to see the end of this year and how that worked. So another question for you all: Did you work remotely before the pandemic? Yes, no. Another poll question real quick. Did you or did you not work remotely? And again, we don't know who answered what. This data is for us to be able to just get a sense of, this team that's here. So looking at this, guys, it's split. So you had, yes, I worked 100%. 35% of you had both a hybrid, and 35% of you worked directly from home. So as you guys can see from that poll, it's across the board, guys. Some of you have already experienced this. Some of you partly experienced this. Some of you have never experienced this at all. So what do we do to actually manage this workforce? And then we're going to call it quits here, okay? This is what we have to consider to be the new normal, is even if we ask people to come back to the actual office, understand that some may or may not feel comfortable with that. So we have to be able to have a hybrid system. We have the technology in place. We have the systems in place now, especially after the last 3 months of IT blitzing. The first tip that we have found is make sure that you're planning and you're organizing a form of communication. How many of you can, if you can raise your hand for this, have been given a communications document of who to communicate with about what and the responsibilities now that you've went virtual? Just raise your hand if you have, and if you haven't, that's okay. We're curious. So some of you have, some of you haven't. And what we have found is some of those individuals that have used that plan, it's worked well. Some of you, since everyone is in kind of this crisis mode, some of them haven't happened. But what you will find is if you have a strong communication strategy in place, it actually will help your organization be able to pass knowledge back and forth and save individuals that are working very hard to keep it afloat from having to extract more knowledge from other people. And that comes to the establishing the communications. The first thing you have to do to be able to do that is establish a communications plan, and from there, accommodate any of the flexibility. One of the things we're also seeing is some people have kids that are working from home or that are home from school. They still need to be taught. So we have a few of our people that are not even available from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. in the afternoon because their children are home and they need to be able to do school. So we have to be able to accommodate some flexibility for them. And then we also have to be able to create comfortable spaces with our interactions and our communications. One of the things, we're all struggling with stress, anxiety, frustration. We all want to go do something fun, and it can bottle up and it can be vented out at coworkers. So make sure you create a comfortable space for them to interact. And do yourself a favor. There may be ways for you to expand availability for yourself. What does that mean? If you are a manager, you may have to be able to have a meeting from 5:30 to 7 o'clock at night because that individual was teaching their son or daughter from 1 to 4. And so our working world is starting to mesh into our personal lives. And for some of you, especially myself, that like to compartmentalize those, it makes it very tough. And then you also need to set realistic expectations. If you don't want to be flexible, or you can't be flexible because you are the one with children, set the realistic expectation to your boss and them that I cannot do this from 1 to 4. My children are home. I need to be able to make sure that they don't die, and I need to make sure that they're fed and that they are getting their schoolwork done. Because, ladies and gentlemen, work will always be there. Your children will only be in the house for, if you're lucky, those 18 years. And for some of you, you're like, well, they can go. But I'm telling you, it's a double-edged sword, and you will miss it tremendously. One of the things we also do is those daily huddles. We kind of do a brain dump or a information dump over communications we've had, things that have happened, so that we can help expedite our coworkers in being able to get that information back out to them. And then one of the other things that we must do as managers is delegate the responsibilities and put timelines on when you want something back. That is one of the major problems as a manager and a leader that we do not do well. Put an exact time, date in which you want to have it returned. And from there, continuing to contact and be a part of the clients and the initiatives that are customer and client focused, especially as a manager, no matter if you're in the training or not. Understand that the clients and the customers are what drive the business, and you're there to solve inner problems, but at the same time, you're also there to make sure that the customer is being impacted positively. And then this last one, now that we are at a point where we can finally say that we have dumped information as much as possible in the lower level of blooms, it's time to make things interactive. And the reason why we have to take into consideration that we are now fighting for the attention against YouTube, which is putting up 48 hours of content every second, and you're fighting against all the video game websites, all the stuff going on in the background of that person's life, because now their personal and professionals are bleeding. We need to make sure that we are competing with the same things that they have as attention. And so with that said, we are at the breaking point. I have plenty more, but what we're going to do is we'll actually make this a 2-part series. And what I want to let you guys know is I just want to take a moment to say thank you so much for your time today. And my email address and my information, you can find me on LinkedIn. Let's see if I can jump back for you guys, or down. You can find me on Twitter at Andy Hughes, and you can find me on LinkedIn at, I think it was like slide 5, right, guys? There we go. And you can go ahead and find me on LinkedIn, connect with me there. And if you guys are in the K-12 or higher ed, please send me a message so that I can get you added to the list of potentials for the Department of Education's learner analysis study. And you are paid for that. So with that said, I just want to say thank you all. I know COVID is extremely stressful. I know it's stressful for me me. I know it's stressful for you. Hang in there, guys. If you ever want to talk or you're ever stressed out, send me a message. I'm here for you. I know life is tough, and I know that we don't know what the norm is, but what we do know is we have fundamentally shifted as a society in the way that we work and the way that we're going to work from here on out. And so I just want to keep that in mind, that as we go forward, that we are going into an unknown, that at one time we will determine that this is probably the standard of what we're going to be dealing with. The hybrid model will probably come back, but I think the days of all of us being in the office at the exact same time at 8 a.m. For many of us may not be ever the norm again. So with that said, just want to say thank you guys. Appreciate all of your time. And until we speak again, stay creative.